Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Friday. I'm noticing whenever we have our presentations, it's always a lovely day outside if you're in Toronto. So, if this is your first time seeing us, welcome. If you have seen our previous videos, then welcome back. Thank you for watching. My name is Cassandra Francis. I am the founder and CEO of One Piece Therapy, as well as one of the registered psychotherapists at the practice. Today, as you can see from the slide, we have Nancy Rose Wambangwa, who is our intern psychotherapist, as well as a registered psychotherapist qualifying. And today, as you can see from the title, we will be talking about redefining goals, in particular, setting goals and motivation. So I'll pass it on to you, Nancy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cassandra. As mentioned, I am Nancy Rose Wambangwa, and today we'll be talking about redefining goals and setting goals and how motivation plays a part in that as well. So our life goals are defined as desires that we have as individuals to obtain and maintain, and sometimes even in some cases to avoid. And when we set our goals, it's important that we envision it and we plan for it. Also commit to achieving these desired results that we're aiming towards. So working towards goals requires focusing on the present and also your future needs. So sometimes you are trying something that you've tried before and maybe it hasn't worked out. And you may be hesitant to move forward with that particular goal again. So it's really important to be able to trust yourself again and not focus too much on the past, but fuel yourself within the present moment and also look towards the future of how things can turn out. Also, having a state of mind, like I mentioned, in which you believe that you're capable enough to bring forth the results that you are looking for. So really finding that self-motivation and that self-drive to give you that kickstart to move forward and fulfill your goals. So why should you be intentional about your goals? The DSM-5 identifies having goals as an important element in good mental health. And by setting and aspiring reasonable goals based on realistic assessments of your own personal capabilities. So you want to make sure that you have a clear mind. And when you're able to set these goals and work towards these goals, it gives you that self-reassurance, it gives you that confidence, and also it's important that you're setting goals that are reasonable and attainable for yourself, because you don't want to set the standard way too high and out of your reach, out of your means, and then it becomes difficult for you to achieve it and you fail, and then it causes a sense of resistance for you to come back to it again. So definitely you want to do some self-reflection and choose your goals accordingly, and baby steps are okay. A loss of motivation makes it hard to plan or to be enthusiastic about activities. And these difficult times are when planning and structure within your goals are most important. So when you're stressed, or if you're depressed, you know, that sense of motivation goes away, right? You don't have that motivation anymore. But when you're able to plan and structure, put planning and structure behind the goals that you have for yourself, you have something that you can follow through with, even when you don't have that motivation. So when you have that plan, at least it gives you a reminder that, okay, maybe I can take one step on that plan that I have. Maybe I can try to do something on that plan that I have, and it kind of brings you back to that state of mind. And setting a goal is like a challenge. So it's not, there should not be an expectation of setting a goal and it's going to be easy. It's going to happen overnight or it's going to happen right away. It takes time. So definitely it's something that you should be prepared to take on that challenge, and your brain becomes alert to this new idea. And although it's challenging, we want to keep in mind that it is realistic and it is attainable. And success is the sum of small efforts given consistently. So consistency is key. It is important that when you hold yourself to something, that you keep yourself accountable and you consistently work at it, even when it doesn't work out the way you expect it to. That you consistently work through the motions.
Yes, I would like to comment before you change slides, Nancy.
Sure, sure.
Um, the two words that are standing out for me in this slide are intentional and consistently. Um, I remember with clients, not even just goal setting, but even self-care, I
Yeah,
always say, okay, what are your intentions behind it? Right? The goal or the self care activity can be, let's say it is doing a facial at the end of the day, right? So, as much as it might feel tedious to do the facial, when there is intention of it being self care, it becomes soothing and relaxing, right? When it's the goal to do it daily, then we can see the results for upkeeping that. Um, I'm also noticing, I remember this conversation with a client in particular when they asked me, like, okay, so what is the difference between coping and distracting? Right. And then I'm like, well, one, that was a great question.
sure,
I
right?
was like, okay, let me try to figure this out. But then I'm like, you know what? It's the intention, right? Is
Yes.
the intention to work through something, which would be the coping, or is the intention to avoid it, which would be the distraction, right?
Right.
Um, and what we do consistently of one or the other becomes what we're familiar with. It shows up in the outcome of that, right? So I just wanted to give that piece.
Yeah, that's no, that's a great point that you brought up, because when you're intentional, you are acknowledging, you are acknowledging what may be triggering you, and you are choosing intentionally a different way to go about it.
Right. Yes, the control. I hear you saying the control within this process as well, which helps with motivation. But pass it back to you.
All right, all right. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
All right. So when setting a goal, um, it may be there may be many goals that you may have in mind, but in order to narrow it down, and also prioritize your goals, there's a process that you can also take. So you can start off with a miracle question. Um, Imagine tonight, while you're sleeping, a miracle occurs and this challenge you've thought of is solved. So perhaps you have one of many issues and you would like that particular issue to be solved. What differences would you notice in your day-to-day actions? Um, what are the differences in your thought process, if that so if there was a solution, if that problem was solved? How would these differences affect you and also others around you? So perhaps your goal is to get more sleep, for example. Um, what would you notice, for example, being having more energy during the day, being able to function more clearly, Um, and that's how it may affect you, and it may affect others as you being more engaged in conversation. Um, so that's just an example. And finally, in the present moment where you are right now, how would you get to that outcome? Is there anything you can do right now to get there? So, what are the changes that you can consider to get to that point? So, if it was sleeping, getting more sleep, maybe setting a bedtime, setting my alarm for a time to wake up, setting an alarm for a time to go to sleep, and kind of monitoring and reassuring that I'm allowing myself to do that and getting to that particular goal.
Yes. I appreciate this question for the backroads approach to it, right? Like, okay, if this is the goal, what are the signs in order for that to become a reality, right? So some people just think of what they want and not knowing where to start, but it is so crucial to look at the markers of that becoming their reality.
For sure, for sure. What does it take to get there, right?
Right.
All right. So, some of the motivational forces that can help you create these sense of goals, or appreciate these goals more, you can further narrow it down with um, your values and what motivates you. And this can consider different areas of your life. So, your home life, your family, your work, your hobbies. And by identifying your guiding values, you are able to narrow down, what matters most to you and what you feel like you need to work towards. And a lot of the time, when there's a lack of fit between values and what is actually happening in your life, in your reality, this dissonance can cause stress. Um, so it is important to be able to identify those goals. And sometimes we feel the stress and we're feeling those emotions, but we can't quite pinpoint where it's coming from. So it's good to self-reflect and self-evaluate your goals, because then at least you know where you stand with those goals. Are you working towards them? Do you plan to start on working on them eventually? That way it gives you some sense of peace in the present moment, instead of stressing because you know that you wish you could do this and you want to do this, but you haven't really taken much thought or action towards it, and it is internally affecting you and ends up acting out in your behaviors, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, to assess your current situation in regard to your desired goals, it can be good to scale it from a one to 10. Um, so, once you're able to identify what those are, what is your motivation to do concrete actions to achieve the goal? So, you want to do X, Y, and Z. What are you willing to do to get there? What are the actions that you are willing to make to get there? Not necessarily what do you have to do, but what will you do? And how confident do you feel about finding a solution for the challenge or about achieving your goal? So, one being the least confident, and 10 being the most confident. So you really want to see where you stand in terms of your confidence level on achieving that goal. And what can you do to increase that? Sometimes it can be being more knowledgeable, getting more perspective on the situation, really brainstorming different solutions. So, what can help you get to that solid 10?
Oh, sorry, go back.
Sure. Oh, oh, all right.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to go back to the second point. A lack of fit between values and what is happening in your life can cause stress. This is so important. And it's interesting because I was similarly having this conversation with the client today. Just in terms of like what we want versus what we need, right? And the goals and the motivation behind it, right? And even acknowledging where is the want coming from, right? You mentioned notifying, or not notifying, becoming mindful of our emotions so
Mhm.
that it can tell us what is that true need, what is that true want, right? Um, because there can be a goal that we see on social media, and as we're learning, social media is not exactly reality, right? So it's questioning, like, is that your goal because of that is what is being seen, or is that at core a value, right?
Right.
Which would help to strive towards whatever it is that is coming up. Um, so it's so important, like just in general, being aligned with what you're moving towards, because that can challenge the motivation and therefore the outcome of the goal. Um, yeah.
For sure, for sure. Thank you for that input. I totally agree. And you mentioned a great point about getting to that emotional part. You know, it's reading your own emotions and then being able to verbalize them to yourself, right?
Absolutely. The insight that
Yeah.
therapy can help with.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So prioritizing is something we do on a daily basis. And it is the same process needed when setting your goals. Um, you may have goals that you've put off for so much time. And you may have goals that you've worked on a little bit. So when it comes to re-evaluating your goals and where they stand, redefining your goals, you want to really think about, are they A, essential? Are they B, tasks? Are they important, but don't have to be done immediately and may eventually become an A task? um, See what can you delegate. Sometimes it's hard for us to ask for help. And there are times that you can see, okay, what can I ask for help with? What can I get some assistance with here? Sometimes we want to do everything by ourselves, but definitely you want to look into your support system and how you can get help, even on as in a work setting, for example. Even with yourself, Cassandra, running a business, sometimes, you can wear so many hats, but,
Yeah.
you eventually you will need to delegate some tasks, right?
Absolutely.
And it's so essential to be able to recognize your self-care, recognize your boundaries and things like that.
Absolutely. I appreciate you using me as an example, because I was about to be like, okay, Nancy, provide an example. I did not expect me, but you're right. You're right. There's definitely this constant, let's go through ABCD, and not even within a day, but even within a month, like what needs to be done by the end of the month. Sometimes it feels less pressure broadening that timeline a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah, so I appreciate that.
for sure. And then unnecessary tasks. Do you really need to do it? Um, like you were mentioning, even in terms of the goals and social media and the things that it can project. And
Right.
it's like you see for example, very materialistic, but you see a bag, someone with a bag, and you're
Mhm.
thinking to yourself, I need that bag.
I need the Birkin. I need to
I
get,
need
get
that
the
Birkin.
Birkin. Woo!
Right.
Yes.
And, when we're prioritizing our goals, where does that stand? right?
Right.
So it's really important to go through that process as well, and be realistic with
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
All right. So more so, we want to make sure that our goals meet the SMART acronym. So as being specific, so goals should not be fuzzy, vague, or poorly defined. You want to be able to identify exactly what you are aiming towards. Um, and you want it to be measurable. So, um, you want to make sure that you're able to attain that. For example, if I want to be, if I say I want to be healthy, or I'm aiming towards that type of goal for myself, how can I measure that? Is it the weight that I'm looking for? Is it the BMI, whatever it may be that I'm using to measure that. Um, and then also it being attainable and acceptable. So you want to do something that's within your means. And you want to think about also obstacles that can come your way. For example, with the pandemic, working out could have been a challenge for some people, I'm sure, because the gyms had locked down sometimes. So it was on and off. So some people's consistency with working out was dependent on the operations of the gyms being open or not.
Right.
So definitely maybe working around that, saying, okay, I'm going to take a walk every morning. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I don't know when the next time the gym is going to be open. And if it is open, I'll go some days, but on other days, I'll incorporate other things, right? Um, and it being realistic. So make sure the goal is realistic for the resources you have available, such as time, money, physical health, social support, knowledge, and skills. Um, you know, so if you have a goal, I don't know, like if you have a goal and you want to make it there tomorrow, but you know that it's something that takes time. You want to be realistic with yourself, right? Everything is a process. And T for time. So you want to lay out a plan with specific steps to reach your outcome. So great, you have an initial goal. What time are you going to put aside for that particular goal? We have 24 hours in a day, and we want to allot, whether it be an hour or half an hour, well, even if it's 15 minutes, whatever it may be, which days are you going to allot that time towards your goal? Because it's so easy for those 24 hours to just fly us right by, right? And then it's the end of the day, and it's, oh, I'll do it tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So setting a solid goal, I think, is important for sure, and
Yes.
planning the time for it.
Yes. This SMART acronym works so well. I've read a lot of research articles on how it also works with addiction as
Mm,
well. Um, because it's concrete, right? It's measurable, it's realistic. Like it's pointing out everything needed to achieve the outcome. Um, yeah, this is great. Do you mind walking us through like an example of what the whole acronym would look like?
sure. I was using the working out goal,
Yes.
or attaining health. So being specific. So let's say I want to reach a goal weight,
Okay.
a particular goal weight for
Right.
myself. And so I would set it. I don't want to like throw out a number or anything like that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you want to throw out a specific number, whether it be 150 pounds, 180 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever it may be, wherever you are,
Right.
right? And M, measurable and meaningful. So one, it can be meaningful to me because I value health and wellness. And measurable, being able to weigh myself to see if I've gotten to that particular goal.
Right.
Attainable and acceptable. So what am I doing? What can I do to get there? So I have to change my eating habits more likely.
Mhm.
Maybe cut out the chips and the candy and the
Mhm.
pizza.
Right. All the
um,
good stuff. I'm joking.
all the good stuff. But you know what? I'm a prime believer of balance.
For sure.
And
For sure.
I love the 80-20 rule.
Right.
So being, at your best and for that 80% and giving yourself grace for that 20%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if it's Monday to Friday, I'm eating well, then maybe Saturday and Sunday I'll have that pizza and I won't feel so guilty about it because I have a plan in mind,
Right.
right? And it's structured. So in the end, it's attainable and it's also acceptable. And it being realistic. So make sure this goal is realistic. Um, I would not think to maybe, I don't know, drop 15 pounds in a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get in the you start working out and I'm guilty for it, but after 1 week, I'm probably looking in the mirror thinking like, yep, I definitely see the results. It's been
Right.
1 week.
That's it for the year.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
Right. So you want to be realistic and understand that things take time. And,
Mhm.
if you do have health conditions, you want to also take that into consideration. You don't want to be hard on yourself just because somebody else might be carrying like 200 pounds. It doesn't mean you have to be there. You want to do everything at your pace, at your time. And that leads me to the last one with time. So laying out a plan. So, when am I going to get to the gym or when am I going to make time to work out? Is it going to be 3 days a week? Is it going to be once a week? Um, just as long as I have a plan to follow. So that, let's say if it's weekly, by the end of the week, I can evaluate myself. I told myself, I set a goal for 3 times. Did I go 3 times? Maybe not. But at least I have something to hold myself accountable for and look forward to doing better the following week.
Right. I also want to quickly add before we move on, just in terms of the R and being realistic, I noticed social support, and that
Yeah,
is also crucial as much as, again, we're saying, not necessarily you figure it out, but you create this plan. It's also being realistic that if you need support, make
yeah,
that part of your plan, right? If you need more accountability from an external person, make that part of your plan. So that is, it's so crucial to be realistic, intentional, and in everything else that we've been mentioning so far.
for sure. Social support is a great point that you highlighted there because getting you can be accountable for yourself, but it's always good too when you have others that can motivate you and can encourage you on your journey, because it's not easy. It's a challenge.
Absolutely.
Right. So I just wanted to also quickly just touch on the types of goals and familiarizing ourselves with those. So whether it is long term or short term, something you plan to do tonight, just like you said, like planning to do a facial for yourself or a bubble bath for yourself that night, um, you know, or wanting to do more self-care, so doing these things more often. So whether you're looking at it long term or short term, they can be broken down into smaller, more attainable goals that will propel you towards the success. And the three types of goals are process, performance, and outcome goals. So the process goals are the specific actions or processes of performing. So let's say, for example, I want to get a particular, like I want to pass a particular course, as a student. The process may require, we're talking about, when we speak process, we're talking about the baby steps, the small steps. What are the things that I need to change? What are the things that I need to implement? So perhaps I need to study more often. Perhaps I need to stop procrastinating. Perhaps, I need to read more, do more research. So these are the processes these are the process goals that you have. And then you also have the performance goals. So those are based on personal standard or self expectation. So these are all connected. The performance goal for me could be, in that case of studying, is that I want to achieve a specific grade, a particular GPA. So this is the standard I'm setting for myself. This is what I'm expecting to get out of my process goals. So in the process goals, you can see how it's the change of behavior that is happening here. So, implementing different things that will increase your likability to achieve that performance goal. And then you have your outcome goals, which are based on the consequences or the end results. This goes beyond your personal standard. This goes beyond your self expectation that you set for yourself. The outcome goals are difficult to control because of other outside influences. So it can be the opportunities that come from your consistency through your process goals, and with that, achieving your performance goals. Therefore, you have more opportunities that come. So let's say I've increased my study times. I'm procrastinating less. I've achieved the GPA that I expected. So then I graduate with a higher grade. So now my outcome goals can be me being accepted to, a particular job or opportunity, or that was looking for a student like me, right? That work towards that. So it's what you're reaping, the benefits that you're reaping from being consistent with your goals.
Yeah, you can go
Did you
ahead.
have
I'm
something
not
to
going to say
add on
anything.
that, Cassandra?
Um,
It was a lot for the slide, so I just want to make
yeah,
sure.
you're good. You covered a good amount. I did have a question that is now actually escaping me. Um,
Oh.
oh, yes, I did have a question. It was more so like, and this is not even exactly what you're talking about. This is kind of outside of it. Um, but even the question of, how much sacrifice should be involved in goals and goal
Mhm.
setting,
Yeah.
right? Because as much as, you're mentioning the process, the performance, the outcome, like even along the way, like how much sacrifice should be made. I don't know if you
Right.
have like anything to add to that.
Yeah, like the sacrifice, I would say, definitely fits into the process goals, because those are the things that it's the behaviors that you need to now change,
Right.
right? I might feel much better laying on the couch,
Mhm.
watching TV, eating popcorn, than getting up and making sure that work is done, you
Right.
know. So it is really sacrificing, as you mentioned, is a key word, because, and then going back to it being a challenge,
Mhm.
because you have to get rid, or not get rid, but replace
Mhm.
your old habits with the new ones.
Right.
So really looking forward and and being able to say, okay, this is my goal.
Right.
I value my goals. This is what drives me. I'm motivated to do this. I feel passionate about this. So you've gotten to that stage, and now you're at a point where, okay, I need to make these changes. This
Right.
is what I need to do. I used to love doing this. I love red velvet cake. I wish
Mm-hmm.
I could have it every week. But you know what? I'm gonna hold off, maybe have a smaller piece, or making those sacrifices and changing your habits, changing your decision making process in order to work towards that performance goal, and then getting the outcome goals also.
Absolutely.
So it's
Yes, and
really a flow.
it's really what, sorry?
It's really a flow.
A flow.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, that and that even increases the motivation when we have that momentum, right? Like, okay, this is going well. I'm finding my groove, that
Yes.
flow. And not to challenge you per se, Nancy, but even to challenge those listening. Because as much as there is necessary sacrifices needed in the process part or
Yeah.
stage, um, I don't know. I'm also feeling like just thinking about various goals I can have. At
Yeah.
some point, it's like how much sacrifices am I actually willing to make
Right.
before the outcome more so becomes an inconvenience or just
Mhm.
something that maybe I'm not aligned with as much as I think I might want to get there. Um, so even that balancing act, I guess, as important as it is to consider that you do need to make some sacrifices, it's also thinking about how much sacrifices are needed and
Yeah.
is that worth it essentially.
For sure, for sure. Again, like we were talking about prioritizing, right? And being able to see where that goal lands for you, and also rating it and saying, how much am I willing to put into this?
Right.
You know, and that brings us to considering your gains and considering your losses.
Yeah,
And then really evaluating it if it's worth it,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And if it's unnecessary, then get rid of it. You might not need that Birkin, at least not for now.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. And as I was mentioning about the flow, it just brings me to the next slide. Just really like achieving the process goals gives you a good chance to achieve that performance goal. And then similarly, when you achieve the performance goal, you have a better chance of achieving the outcome goals. So it really goes hand in hand. It's just like a cycle.
A cycle. Okay.
You have to trust the process. I love seeing that, right?
Yeah. You do. You absolutely do. And if you can't trust yourself at the beginning, it does go back to get the support you need so you can take on that trusting the process, trusting yourself, and achieving your goals.
Absolutely. Sometimes you need that reassurance, and it takes a village.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So, jumping into preparation for obstacles. So, we all know, as you mentioned, sacrifices, right? Sometimes you say, you know what? I've made the sacrifice too many times. It's just not aligning with me anymore. And it's okay to change. It's okay to change your mind. But also, when you are persistent about something and you are sure of something, you want to think about why it doesn't align, right?
Yes.
Um, and it's not just the emotion in the moment, too,
Mm.
right? So identify the benefits of success and the obstacles you may face. Consider these questions. What has stopped me in the past? So if you've tried doing this before, what has stopped you in the past? What got in the way? Um, I was talking about school and grades and things like that. So what may have stopped me from being a better student and achieving a performance goal of a particular GPA? In student life, it could be hanging out with the wrong crowd,
Mm,
bringing you away from your initial goals while you should be studying. Um, it could be just spending your time on other things that are not as important as this particular goal. What's and who sabotages me?
mm,
That is something to consider,
yeah.
because the people that we have around us, we tend to have an expectation that, of course, they are there for support. But the reality is sometimes your goals may not be aligned with another person's goals.
Mhm.
So they might be hanging out and doing other things, but that might be okay for them. But it may not be aligned with your goals,
Right.
right?
Yes,
So having that disconnect can be hard sometimes with the influence.
absolutely. I'm continuously asking clients. I hope the ones I've asked are watching this video. But I am constantly asking, who are you surrounded by?
Mhm.
Right? Like it's so crucial to reflect on who you're surrounded by, and maybe it's not even the people you hang out with, but who are you aware that has access to you, right? Because that also influences what you think, what you're perceiving, how you're moving towards growth ultimately. But it does influence a lot. So it's so important to always have that reflection. Um, and it just can't go over your head. Like it's just so important to acknowledge who you're surrounded by.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that acknowledgement, you gain more perspective on where you stand as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what steps will I take to get around this? So, knowing how to say no, knowing how to set your boundaries, knowing how to plan your time and stick to it. Um, you know, and like we just said, being able to acknowledge that, okay, these are the people around me, this is the nature of my surroundings, of my environment. How can I not allow this to take me away from my goals or become an obstacle? So it's almost, even though the obstacle, it's not about removing the obstacles because they're always going to be there, but it's about how to handle them when they come.
Right.
All right. So moving forward, thinking about the next steps. So you have your, just a quick recap. You have set your goals with your values. You've gauged how motivated you are about your goals. You've acknowledged how much you're willing to take it on and the sacrifices you're willing to take. And the processes that you need to take. You've set an achievement goal for yourself, and you're open to the opportunities that may come. So now you want to make a commitment. You want to be able to acknowledge all these things and be committed to go about setting up a step-by-step plan. So now that you have a step-by-step plan, you want to make sure that you're following through. You're keeping yourself accountable. Therefore, a system for recording your progress can be really helpful. Um, you know, I think journaling is really good. being able to, after a week's worth of your plan, being able to write how you did this week, or even talking to a friend about it, just so that you can see your progress. There are also charts that you can use to track your progress, just to keep yourself on track.
Mhm.
And also a reward system to help push yourself forward. Also the snowball effect. So, the more that you are achieving your goals, and and it doesn't have to be the major goal. It can be the small steps. So if it's self-care, and you took a bubble bath this week, and you did a facial this week, like pat on the back, you did well,
Mhm.
right? How are you going to reward yourself? Is it going to be a lunch out with a friend, with your family, by yourself,
Mhm.
whatever it may be, to reward yourself, just to help push you forward? And the more you give yourself these rewards, it's like that gratification that comes from it, it kind of pushes you and motivates you to continue to do well for yourself, so that you can continue to treat yourself well,
Mhm.
right? So all in all, it's wellness all around.
Right.
And then also to tell other people about your goal. This is known as an accountability partner. So, as we had brought up previously with the social supports and having others involved, in what you're doing, being vocal about it, and letting everybody know, hey, this is what I really want. This is what I really believe in. This is, and sometimes people may ask you why. Why do you want to do that? And you've already done all the thinking process behind it. So, why you stand for what you stand for, and why you're doing it. So,
Mhm.
it's great, because then people can see you walking in your truth, walking in your power. So that's a great thing.
Right. I have a question, Nancy.
Sure.
Would you say that each part of these are necessary in setting up a goal, or votes? Yeah. So would you say each part is necessary?
Um, I would say each part is helpful, is an aid, can be used as an aid. And I think that the more you integrate these tools, the better you are at sticking to your goal.
Right.
Um, Definitely commitment, I would say, is 100%. You need to be committed. That's for sure.
Right.
A step-by-step plan, it's a guide, in everything you do, it's so systematic, right? Like, whether you're at work, whether you're at school, it's okay, you need to do this and this. And we do so well following the rules, following steps. So it's interesting how, when it comes to ourselves, it becomes difficult to set steps for ourselves, to take care of our own selves, right? Or to achieve a particular goal for ourselves. So it's really important that we implement the tools that we're learning on the outside, and applying it to the success of ourselves and our own growth. A system for recording progress, the accountability. I think it's important. It's important. Not everybody does it, but
Right.
I think that it can be a great tool to add on.
Mhm.
Being able to say, you know what, I didn't do so great last week. Because when you don't acknowledge it, it's easy for you to, oh, okay, I don't acknowledge it, but I'm just going to keep moving forward, which is fine. But if you have something to compare, not to compare to others, but to compare to yourself, compare to your own progress, and kind of, a lot of people use the whole analogy, they're in competition with themselves. When they look in the mirror, that's who they're in competition with. And I think that's where this comes in. It's okay, how did I do last week? How can I do better? And kind of raising the bar for yourself continuously.
Right.
um yeah, for sure. And again, this is something that is used systematically to make sure that to ensure growth.
Right. I'm just thinking about a client right now and just a couple of responses, in terms of the last step here of telling other people about your goal. I'm
Yeah.
also aware that there's also this, I guess culture of, move in silence.
Hmm.
You don't have to speak on your goals all the time. Just do it and you'll get it done.
Yeah.
Um, as much as there can be truth to that, right? Because that's more so about who are you surrounded by for you to not want to share what you're doing, right? To kind of hide that and then come out with whatever your goal is. Um, Even the people that decide to maybe not broadcast their goal, I can guarantee at least one other person knows about it.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So even that part, like even in each way, letting someone know can be very beneficial.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it's so true. Moving in silence. And
Right.
yeah, I don't necessarily think it needs to be like screaming off the rooftop. This is what
Right,
I'm
right. It doesn't need to be on
doing.
CP24 for those that live in Toronto. Right, yes.
Right. But absolutely, the great question you ask is who is around you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, when you think about your circle, you want to make sure that your circle is a support system for you, people that you love, that love you, that you trust.
Right.
It should be a safe space. And even if it's not everyone in the circle, then at least, like you said, one person that you're able to share that with and be transparent. And even if it's hard, sometimes there are goals that you embark on that are very hard to even admit that, hey, I have to deal with this, like you said, with addictions. That's not something easy to confront by yourself, yet alone with someone else.
Absolutely. I know with people who are experiencing an addiction, they sometimes have a sponsor, right? I think they
Mhm.
call it different things depending on what the addiction is, but I'm aware with alcoholism, it's a sponsor, right?
Mhm.
So, or other people experiencing other goals that they want to be in pursuit of, they might be telling their therapist, right? So
Mhm.
again, it doesn't have to be someone you know as well. It can be a professional that you speak to or someone that has already walked that experience. So there's options and they're all beneficial to have with the journey.
For sure. For sure. All right. All right. So we've covered a lot about goal setting and the processes and the steps and the tools that you can use. So, where does the motivation fit in? Intrinsic motivation, really finding the goal, finding that fuel from within. So we talked about goal setting, which is characterized by conscious reflection process. So we went into a lot of depth and talked about all of the thought processes and digging up the emotions and being the self-reflection. So it's really making that conscious effort mentally before you can make those physical actions or changing your behavior.
Hmm.
So that the goal pursuit is associated with the conscious intent. So after you have that thought process, you need to move forward with intention. After that commitment is made, you have a plan, you have tools, all of these things will keep you accountable. You now need to move forward consciously with intention, um, beyond just the thought process. So, goal pursuit can be automatically triggered if the representation of the goal is directly primed. So just as you can think about bad habits, um, like eating Cheetos every day or something. A bad habit can be repeated. And it's the same with good habits. When you intentionally replace that bad habit with a good habit through repetition, it allows you then to become conditioned to that new behavior. So, if in the beginning I might have a Cheeto bag and an apple, in the beginning, it's going to be hard. If my intention is to say, you know what, I want to stop eating Cheetos, um, it's going to be hard for me to grab that apple in the beginning. But with my conscious intention, I will grab that apple. I might not be happy about it, but I will grab that apple. And the more I make that decision and change my behavior, the more I will automatically do it, because it started with that conscious intention, and it can become that automatic behavior, you want to call it, or a good habit. And first, action initiation defines the implemented intentions, as I mentioned, which creates a strong mental association between the situation and the behavior. So I like to explain this as being at a crossroads, right? You get to the, let's go back to the studying example. But your friends won't rather go out that night and you have to work on something really important, right? So being at that crossroads, it's like, what do you do? Do you go out, or do you work towards that goal, right? Um, and the more you come to these crossroads and the more you make the right decision, it's the more your mind will just adjust, and the less of a struggle. You'll feel less of a struggle in those situations, even if they present themselves in different ways.
Right.
And secondly, increased exposure to the action within your memory enhances the probability of goal completion, as it allows for previously planned actions to occur again. So again, just exposure to the action in your memory, it kind of it's like a memory foam, like it remembers it. So like I was saying, like it can happen in a different form, but being able to kind of have that resistance due to your mind being able to bring yourself back to that initial intention that you set for yourself in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just quickly, because I'm hearing you say that eventually, our goals can become a lifestyle, right? Which
Yes,
makes it more habitual, regardless of what it looks like and how it's coming at us. If it's a lifestyle, then again, there's that habitual nature, that familiarity with that.
absolutely. I love that term, a lifestyle. And
Mhm.
I always try to say that, I don't, like, when I'm setting goals, I don't like to say, oh, this is my main goal. It's like, no, I want it to become my lifestyle.
Mhm.
Because it's you really changing your behaviors, and it ends up changing who you are, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because then people are thinking, oh, she's not gonna come, she's
Mm.
always you that you
Mhm.
know
Mhm. Mhm.
um because it's now become a part of who you are.
Mhm.
So the goals that you set for yourself and ends up defining who you are.
Right. And that's why you want to be intentional, right?
Right.
Because you're shaping who you are by what you are achieving.
Yes.
So if you don't want to be known as, the one who studies, to get good grades, or the one who rather choose an apple than chips, right? Then yeah, then maybe that's not what you want to create in your lifestyle.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And just for further context and further examples, like um perhaps even with like self-esteem, you
Mhm.
know, being able to kind of lean in towards your own decision making, lean in towards who you are and what you feel. And when others are stepping in to say, hey, you should do this or you should do that, and having opinions and suggestions on who you are and what you should do. And that's why it's so important to go through this process, because the more you are definite about your goals, the more you're able to be confident and stand up for yourself, and kind of just stand in your power when you are challenged that way, right? And not having exterior thoughts being conflicting with how you feel and what you've already, or where you imagine yourself to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. So, more motivational sources and tools. So, there's research that suggests that goal pursuit is automatically triggered when goals are inferred from the behavior of others, an effect termed goal contagion. And um, we were talking a little bit about this, about this earlier, when we were saying that the people around you can be such an influence.
Right.
So other ways that we can use this to our advantage are vision boards. I know some people use vision boards, and this is the house I'm going to have, and this is the career I'm going to have, and this is the car I'm going to drive, and really making that clear image of maybe people, like inspirational people, that you see doing these things, and constantly exposing yourself to that and being able to say, okay, I'm going to work towards that. And it's not just a matter of running after what you see there, but again, going through the process, like, what do I need to do to get there?
Mhm.
And some people have mentors. So, if you want to be in a particular position, being around someone who's able to mentor you and be able to guide you can be very helpful. Because not only you are able to see the processes right in front of you happening, but you're able to also get the advice and the support from them as well. And also, as we were mentioning earlier, family and friends. I know sometimes you see, in families, like you might have like one person's a doctor and then the child ends up being a doctor, and everybody in the family is a doctor.
Mhm. Mhm.
So really, having those reflections, having those um, people in your life that are already doing something that you may look towards achieving, it can be very, very helpful. And at that, it helps also for you to, another perspective is, how can you be a changing agent for someone else,
Mhm.
right? By you achieving your goals, by you doing things, someone else can be looking up to you and thinking, hey, I want to do that as well, or I appreciate how this person has done that. And you can also be that changing agent.
Absolutely.
And when developing habits, there are often multiple means to attain a goal. So you want to explore options. You want to stay motivated. So it may not always be the same thing. We're talking about self-care. And a lot of the time when we talk about self-care, taking a walk is on the list, of
Mhm.
examples.
Mhm.
And I love that with self-care, there's no limits to it. It doesn't have to be a walk. It could be anything. It could be like taking a bath is, again, I want to say it's one of the usual things, but
Mhm.
self-care is whatever you feel is good for you.
Right.
If it's rest because you don't get enough rest, let it be rest.
Mhm.
Let it be that nap in the middle of the day if you need it.
Right. Right.
um, really being able to define like what you enjoy the most, and making time for it. So and being able to achieve that self-care in different ways. So if it's taking a bath today, great. If it's going on vacation next week,
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
It doesn't always have to look the same.
Right.
And keeping it interesting is, I think it's a great thing. Because if it's just taking a bath every time, I think by the fifth bath I might be like, okay.
Might be a bit pruny. All right. Yeah.
Right. So definitely explore the options and choose the ones that work best for you.
Right.
This can also change negative emotional connections and knowledge within action. For example, exercising. People are always saying, I feel so good after a workout, but I hate getting up and going to exercise, right? And it's that emotional connection that you have with it, that knowledge that you associate, like it hurts. I don't, how is it self-care when it hurts?
Right. I'm going to be sore
um,
for 2 days.
right, right. So being able to, like, for example, being able to change the way you approach it can change your experience, change your emotional connection, and the knowledge you associate with it. So it can be, okay, you know what? Today I might I'll do jumping jacks or something. And tomorrow I'll skip.
Mhm.
The next day I'll take a walk. The next day, you know what, I'm gonna like walk on a trail with my family. So making it interesting, changing the narrative a little bit, can change that emotional connection that you have with it. Like we mentioned, making it a lifestyle, right, changes the way you feel about it.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Another motivational factor, we talked about planning, um, and having sorry, we talked about planning. So willful planning consists of specifically forming implementation intentions as to when, where, and how one will enact the intended behavior to attain a goal. And this will enhance the probability of you achieving success for that goal. So again, just being specific with your plans, that step-by-step plan that we were talking about earlier in the next steps. So when are you going to do it? What date? What time? What is the location?
Mhm.
Really setting it out. And how are you going to do it? So when you already have that set in your mind, and sometimes you have to put it in your calendar, set it in your calendar, write it down, put it somewhere where it's in your face, you can see it. Set a reminder, however, that way you're able to willfully plan, and it's specific enough for you to follow it step by step. And goal directed behavior takes the format of, I will do Y when situation Z is encountered, and can be strategically formed to promote the initiation and successful execution of goal directed actions when having to interrupt or deviate from habitual behavior. So you can do something, a lifestyle can happen all the time. Like when you engage in a particular lifestyle, you can have those good habits happening all the time. But you still have to think about the obstacles, as we mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
right? So it's just being able to prepare yourself. When this happens, when I'm encountered with this, I will do this instead, you
Right.
know. Um, I'm just trying to think of of an example, but really being able to define how you're going to interact at that moment. So again, if friends are going out, you have other important things to do. How are you going to approach that situation? So even thinking about how you're going to interact in that moment, because you're not just going to turn around and say, let me just attain to my goal. How are you going to communicate with that so that you understand the pressure you're going to feel, but you also understand that you need to clearly communicate as well what that's going to be.
Right.
All right, so that brings us to the conclusion. And just to go over some of the things that we discussed today in regards to goal setting and some of the motivational forces that are behind that and that keep it going. So, importantly, for implementation intentions to be effective, people must be aware of their goals and consciously plan their course of action, whether short term or long term. As I was mentioning, trust the process because consistency is key.
Mhm.
So awareness is important. When we talk about goals, I feel like I don't know if the process behind the goal is really considered.
Hmm. Right. It's just the outcome. This is what I want. Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so it is important to be aware, yes, of the goal, but consciously plan. And also trusting that there's a process, and with consistency, you will get there.
And patience.
Patience is key. Yes, definitely patience. Um, it is, and sorry, I wanted to add within the patience, I feel like the coping, that's where the coping comes in too,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because it's like there's that anxiety with like without the patience, there's like that anxiety there. So how do you cope with that anxiousness in that moment,
Right.
right? So that's why self-care on top of even goal setting is a part of the self-care process. However, it's again broken down into smaller steps, right? So feeling that sense of anxiousness when the end, while you're in the process, how do you deal with that? How do you still take care of yourself, you know while you're making those steps? And so this episode, sorry about that, this episode of awareness, that is said to typify a shift from habitual to intentional control. Maintaining a sense of accountability can keep the goal in mental awareness. So again, just being aware, self-aware, and improving your habits. I want to throw out a recommendation. I don't remember the author of the book, but the book is called Atomic Habits,
Mm.
and it discusses just about putting in those putting changing your habits, being aware of your habits, and then making them positive habits, making positive habits to make your goals come true.
Yes.
So
I'm gonna just chime in. I'm gonna put it in the description below, but it's by James Clear.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I listen to just the audio book, but reading is great too. It really just puts it into perspective. It's like, okay, this is the type of person you want to be. What do you need to do to be that person? Okay, so get up every day and do a little bit of that. Get up every day and do a little bit of what needs to happen. So it kind of gives you like a little bit of that push and that motivation, and kind of puts you in the mind state that is required. And then again, the presentation goes over a lot of different tools that can be used to like assist you in moving forward with those processes and staying consistent. Um, yes, so you want to make sure that it's always in mental awareness. So for me, sometimes even like reading the book, it helps me just go back into perspective of, oh yeah, I have my goals. Am I working towards them? Am I making the actions? Have I planned? Am I going according to the plan? So yeah, definitely keeping it in your mental awareness. And people are rarely free of concerns and environmental triggers. You know, things happen and it will distract us from ongoing goal pursuits and even habitual ones, even when you're in that lifestyle. It is important to be aware of challenges and obstacles, and having a plan to overcome these situations is important. And then again, in terms of processes, change is a continuous process, and stability is an illusion.
Hmm.
So, you know, when we think about that end goal, we're always thinking like, oh, I'm going to reach that end goal and everything will be perfect.
Mhm.
And that's not the case. It's just always, you're always in that process. Change, it's going to
Mhm.
happen. So it's definitely a journey and a process overall.
Right. Yes, and I'm thinking, even with saying stability, I wonder if it's more like a conclusion is an
Mhm.
illusion, right? Even
Yeah,
though we have it on the slide right now. Yeah, a conclusion is an illusion. A lot of things are typically ongoing and require that flexibility and readjusting as well.
exactly, exactly. So really being open to that so that you're not like opening yourself up to like failure or disappointment. Um, you know, just knowing that change is it's continuous. And I believe that brings us to the end with any questions, and got our references. So
Okay, perfect.
definitely. Did you have anything to add, Cassandra?
You said a lot. I can conclude, but you can wrap up as you are, and I'll conclude.
All right. So yeah, that's basically it. I think it's so important to be self-aware, to self-reflect about your goals, about where you want to be, who you want to be. And we talked very briefly about the dissonance, but I think that is such an important part. You know, we talked a lot about the processes, but when you don't recognize what you really want for yourself, and you're not digging into those emotions, then you know all of these things come out. They come out in your behaviors, and then you're wondering, you know, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling, you know, depressed, I'm not feeling, you know, as great as I want to feel. So really being honest with yourself, it's so important, beyond the goal. um, and then definitely when it comes to the goal, you want to just be persistent, and you want to believe in yourself and have people around you who believe in you as well.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much, Nancy, for this great presentation. Thank you for those that are watching. If you have any questions about what you've seen today, or maybe something related to what you've seen, please feel free to put it into the comment section, and we'll be happy to respond there, or even create another video if there's a lot of great questions. All of our information is below as well, to visit our website, to contact us, our email address. And Nancy is also accepting clients. So if you are interested in therapy, talking more about your goals, motivations, please feel free to comment below. And thanks for watching.